Heavily affected, but in every place in this country are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before. It is wrong and ultimately self-defeating for a nation of immigrants to permit the kind of abuse of our immigration laws we have seen in recent years, and we must do more to stop it.
Well, I happened to be there that night, and I remember vividly many Democrats, many people, including Nancy Pelosi, who's still in Congress, cheering that speech. They would now say the rhetoric you just heard is white nationalism. What's changed and why? Martin O'Malley was Democratic governor of the state of Maryland. He joins us tonight. Governor, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker. Good to be with you.
Now, you know Bill Clinton.
It was nice to hear. It was nice. I know Mr. Federal. Whoever knows Bill Clinton well. It was nice to hear a president of the United States acknowledge that we're a nation of immigrants. So
yeah. I mean, it depends what you mean by that, but it's right. I mean, basically right. But he said maybe because we ought to, these are the words, be disturbed by the number of illegal aliens, quote, coming into this country, taking American jobs and burdening our infrastructure and social safety net. What's untrue about that?
Well, you know, I didn't research where we were in 1986 on this, but I can tell you that right now the number of foreign-born people in the United States is about what it was in 1925 when my grandparents, both of my grandfathers, were fighting in the First World War. Both of them sons of immigrant people. So, Tucker, I think that the trick tonight that I think Donald Trump is trying to pull off is he needs to shift. When he comes in here, no president since Richard Nixon has walked into a State of the Union with as much of a criminal cloud of investigation hanging over him as Donald Trump has. So he is going to shift the conversation to immigrants. He's going to try to vilify, criminalize.
I'm sorry. Let me just say, first of all, if your grandfathers were fighting the First World War in 1925, they were the only ones. Second, I would say that members, a dozen or so members of Congress have brought people here illegally with them to the speech. So it's not simply the president is using it as a distraction. This is the central issue of the Democratic Party. They shut down the government over it. So it's not just, I mean, it's unfair to say wherever you are, it's not just an issue for the Democrats. Exactly. So let's just address the issue. Let's just hit it head on. What do you think of President Clinton's remarks? They seem reasonable to me, but do they seem reasonable to you is the question.
No, I don't believe that immigrants steal our jobs. I don't believe that that's true. I believe that in any study, reputable study you look at, you see that our country as economy actually depends on a certain level of immigration. And it's my hope that members of both parties will be able to put forward yet again another compromise, and hopefully the president...
But is it that simple? I mean, look, I don't think anybody... I agree with you. There are upsides to immigration, but here's Paul Krugman. You know Paul Krugman, quote, immigration reduces the wages of domestic workers who compete with immigrants. The fiscal burden of low-wage immigrants is pretty clear. I mean, is there any downside economically at all to having a lot of low-wage labor in your country from other countries?
Look, that's not the problem we have. Last year, net immigration from Mexico was, I think, less than zero. So, look, the problem is that we have all these Mexicans coming into our country.
I didn't say that. I'm asking you an economic question. Do you take it seriously? Is that something that you're concerned about at all? Is that an issue? It was an issue for Paul Krugman. It was an issue for Bill Clinton. It's an issue for a lot of voters. Do you think that's a real issue, or is it just nativism and bigotry?
No, not. I think right now it's nativism, and I don't believe that we have a level of immigration that hurts wages. I think what hurts wages is to force people to live in the shadows of our economy and not be able to live in the full light of citizenship, where they can actually, get paid a decent wage for a decent day's work. That's what's a drag on our wages.
Governor,
that's the big problem our country faces.
I appreciate your coming on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
You're seeing motorcade right there. From the center of Washington, where the final countdown to the president's first State of the Union address. For a preview of the president's remarks, we're joined by two of the best connected and most seasoned political watchers in Washington, Fox chief political anchor and special report host Greg Mayer, as well as Mark McCallum, host of The Story with Mark McCallum. It's great to see you both. So what can we expect? What are we going to see in just a minute?
Well, I'll tell you, it's going to be exciting. His first official State of the Union address. Obviously, we had a joint session of Congress speech last year. But as you take a look at the second lady, Mrs. Pence, getting to the box there, you will see this president, we saw him today, energized, trying to, as he says, unify a country that's pretty divided right now.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit about immigration and just general issues in terms of what he's going to be talking about tonight. But, you know, the president this afternoon was very relaxed. I mean, when you look at, I'm looking at some of the faces as we watch everyone filling into the crowd there. You saw Trey Gowdy, who, of course, has been very involved in the investigation that's going on. And then you see the Kamala Harrises and the Cory Bookers, who are hoping that someday they're going to be in the position the president's in right now. But the president seems largely, at the moment, today, unrattled, very focused on his speech, and very much wanting to give America a unified future and to set the tone of an America that's safe and strong going forward.
So both of you mentioned the theme of unity, bringing the country together. That, I mean, so you think the White House sees that as kind of the overall biggest task they face?
I think so. I think they're going to try to hit on elements that they believe they can get some Democrats to sign on to. Infrastructure, some deal on immigration, as you take a look at the motorcade making its way up Pennsylvania Avenue. And eventually, the First Lady will take her position with some guests that we're told will be a part of this speech tonight. I think when you think State of the Union addresses, Tucker, it's not usually the most decorated speech that we always point back to of a presidency, but this presidency is looking to this speech to get beyond the day-to-day story of the day, which has been the investigations, and Democrats who have really stood up to this president and not really said they were going to work with him.
So there's so much pageantry and tradition attached to this speech. Unpack some of it for us. Like, what's the protocol? What happens first in the chamber?
Well, we're going to see the Sergeant at Arms as he calls the meeting to order, essentially. We've already seen Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, and the Vice President, Mike Pence, up on the podium. The President will come in. As we know, we will watch him shake hands. There's always some jockeying on the aisles. We've already seen everybody trying to get into the right position so that they might be able to shake the President's hand. It's also interesting to watch the people who don't want to be on the edge of the aisles as they walk in. We know that there's several members who are not going to be there tonight on the Democratic side. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus in particular who have decided that they don't want to be there. They said President Nably doesn't respect them. So there's going to be some empty seats in the House tonight as well.
Right now you see the U.S. Supreme Court justices, Chief Justice Roberts there. Not all of the Supreme Court justices, again, will be seated here at this speech. And in the back you see Neil Gorsuch, and that is one of, obviously, this administration's, this president's biggest conservative wins, is getting Neil Gorsuch, now the fourth Supreme Court justice there on the end, to sit on this court.
So what is, I know, if you were to kind of sum up the Democratic response, I know there are a bunch of different Democratic responses, but thematically...
Five.
Yeah, at least. So, but thematically, it seems connected to immigration. Is that fair to say, their response?
Yeah, we're going to hear from Joe Kennedy III, definitely a shining, bright young star on the Democrat side. He's an interesting choice for tonight. He's 37 years old, graduate of Harvard and Stanford, and he is clearly somebody that they would like to shine for them tonight. As we all know, it's a difficult spot. We remember Marco Rubio and the drink of water, and Bobby Jindal, who gave a sort of lackluster performance. So the focus will be on him. You know, I mean, obviously so much of the Democratic side has been resisting this president, so he's going to have to search for some positive messages, and what we've seen so far is that he's hitting some of the same tones in terms of unity, bringing the country together. You're going to hear some of that from Joe Kennedy as well.
And Maxine Waters is probably not going to strike the unity tone, Tucker, but of the five, it's interesting that you have five different Democratic responses in perhaps a different presidency. If the GOP was doing that, there'd be a lot of talk about how they weren't unified behind leadership in their party, but we'll see how it goes. This president has a lot on the line tonight.
So, I mean, you know, both know the temperature in the city is really hot right now. People are emotional.
Except for
so, yeah, except your always pictures are cool. But I wonder, in the chamber, are Democratic leaders concerned about outbursts during the speech?
Nancy Pelosi, we're told, gave a speech that said, don't do it. Stay in line, don't have an outburst. But we may very well see that because, as you're right, tensions are high and emotions are high, especially along partisan lines.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the immigration topic is the hottest one of all that you're going to hear tonight, but, you know, looking through at least what we have so far of this speech, the president's going to try to bring people together on this. He's going to talk about the future, that everybody should have the opportunity to thrive in America. I mean, I think it looks so far that he's trying to give a speech that is not going to be very controversial. I talked to Bill Bennett earlier, and he was saying, you know, he has to also maintain the strength that we've seen in him that makes him different. And that's the line that he's going to have to try to walk tonight, Tucker.
These speeches tend to be foreign policy heavy, of course, it's the president. But particularly State of the Union addresses. Do you have any idea what he's going to cover there?
Well, I think obviously he has a great story to tell about ISIS and what happened with ISIS in Iraq, in Syria. He'll talk about our commitment in Afghanistan, perhaps about the problems with Pakistan. But I think, and I've talked to a few people, that North Korea is going to be a central focus of at least the foreign policy part of this. And throughout the night, there are going to be moments, I'm told, that people will remember. And that you may see a big foreign policy moment in this speech. His biggest focus, though, will be on the economy and what he sees as a turnaround directly to the tax law.
And just one thing on the foreign policy front, you know, I think the thing that divides this president from previous presidents is that he is not, he believes that there's a connection between the money that is given from the United States and the relationship that he has with that country. And historically, those two things have been separate. In terms of military connections and aid that goes to a country, he's made it very clear he doesn't see it that way at all, whether it comes to Europe or whether it comes to Israel or the Palestinians or Pakistan. So I think that's something that's very different about this president. I think we're going to hear some of that tonight.
So he expects something in return for the investment. Amazing. That's it. I should have asked you this question at the outset because it's such an obvious one. Who's sitting, do we know who's sitting with the Trump family tonight?
There's a long list. As you see, the First Lady is being escorted to the box now, wearing a lovely white suit. She has a long list of guests. Let's listen in if we could, Tucker.
Watching the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, just entered the chamber. There it is. A truly bipartisan moment. President Trump's cabinet, one cabinet member traditionally missing always from every State of the Union address. That person literally an undisclosed location. Practical and traditional reason. The President's speech is about to begin, as you can see. And Fox News' Brett Baer and Mark McCallum will be back to continue our live coverage. Sean Hannity and Laura after that. Stay tuned. Fox News on this all night long.
Look here on Capitol Hill, a beautiful but crisp evening here in the nation's capital, as we are now just moments away from President Trump delivering his first official State of the Union address. Good evening from Washington, I'm Brett Baer.
And I'm Martha McCallum. President Trump is set to enter the House chamber, like so many before him, to the familiar call of the Sergeant at Arms, announcing the President of the United States to the Speaker of the House and to the American people.
We have a full slate of analysts ready to preview and then break down both the President's speech and